Muhammadu Buhari is sworn in as Nigeria's new president. We'll take a closer look at what his administration could mean for the nation's future.
It's music time in Africa.
The 50th anniversary of VOA's longest-running English language program, Music Time in Africa. And who made it onto Forbes' list of 2015's most powerful women? Africa 54 starts right now.
Good evening and welcome. I'm Vincent McCory. This is Africa 54. A new era of leadership is underway in Nigeria. Former General Muhammadu Buhari was sworn in Friday as the nation's new president. He is the first Nigerian candidate to defeat a sitting president in popular elections. In a ceremony broadcast live by Nigerian television, Mr. Buhari took the oath of office at a ceremony in the capital, Abuja. The festivities were attended by dozens of heads of state, including U.S. Secretary of State John Kerry. President Buhari replaces Goodluck Jonathan, who attended Friday's ceremony. Buhari faces major issues such as high unemployment, corruption, and Boko Haram violence in Nigeria's northern region, problems that his predecessor was not able to solve. President Buhari has said that he will have zero tolerance for corruption. During a brief stint as Nigeria's military dictator in the 1980s, Mr. Buhari cracked down on graft and is seen as someone who is not tempted by the promise of kickbacks. Political observers warn, however, that as president, he will be dealing with politicians whose standards are not so clearly defined. Now, for more on the inauguration of Mr. Buhari, Cynthia Ari of Channels TV joins us on the phone from Lagos. Hello, Cynthia.
Hi, Vincent. Good evening.
Good evening. Now, if you can, in as few words as you can, describe for us how the mood has been in the country on this day.
2 words: excitement and high expectations. That's what's going on right now in the country. But in a way, the pressure it's really high concerning the expectations. What we'll expect from the president, because there's a lot to be done.
Exactly.
A whole lot.
Yes. Now, what did the president say in his acceptance speech that would reflect that he does appreciate the enormity of the challenge ahead?
Oh, first of all, he gave thanks to his predecessor. You know, he conceded defeat, which actually was able to curb potential post-election violence. That was the first, and then he thanked the electorate, for staying on long queues under the hot sun, in the rain, basically to ensure that the votes counted. Then he basically hit the nail on the head, talking about the challenges at hand. First of all, Boko Haram. He also thanked Chad, Niger, and Cameroon for their collaborative effort, but said he was going to ensure that the group would be conquered, and also made reference to the Chibok girl, saying that there would not be a total sense of having conquered the group if the girls were not found. He also did address the issue of unemployment, because that's a very big issue, and also hit the nail on the head concerning electricity. That's a very big one. So basically, the expectations are high, but he was able to, in his speech, he thanked the electorate, talked about security, unemployment, and electricity.
Yes.
As well as also education.
Now, in terms of the fact that this is a totally different era, the ruling party for a long time is out of power, does it give people that feeling that perhaps this is what promises to make a big difference in Nigeria's future?
I think he covered that, especially at the beginning of his speech, when he said he belongs to all and does not belong to anyone in particular. Basically saying he's a ruler who, has the country's interests at heart, and not just necessarily a group of people, maybe in terms of political party or any individual, especially because he's a Muslim leader. So by saying he belongs to all, I think he was able to eliminate the fears of any other religious group, maybe, by saying, I'm a leader for all of you, I'm not just a leader for one. So by saying that and not stressing on it, I think that statement in itself was really powerful.
Well, Cynthia, thank you very much. Cynthia Ari of Channels TV reporting from Lagos. Now, for some insight into what could be expected of a Buhari administration, I'm joined by Ms. Mercy John Ekanem, an independent analyst on Nigerian affairs. Ms. John Ekanem, welcome to Africa 54.
Thank you, Mr. Mukari.
Yes, now, Mr. Buhari is coming back for the second time, and for some, there's still memories of the 80s when he was a military ruler. What is it that, from that past, actually gives people hope that the future in Nigeria will be even better, perhaps?
Mr. Buhari, General Buhari at the time, was a very strict, disciplined leader, and he enforced discipline in many Nigerians that we had not had in the past. People would go to a place like a bank or post office, and everybody would huddle together, scramble to be serviced. But when he came, he brought in what they call war against indiscipline. So when you go to a place, whoever comes first gets to be served first. So people they line up, get in the queue to be served. And so that brought some kind of order. And then there was another aspect of his governance, Saturday sanitations. Everybody would be out one Saturday a month, cleaning everywhere.
That's cool.
So that was really something that speaks to, even though it was in the past, to what he would bring to the government this time.
He was a military ruler. When you have the gun, you can make people do anything. Now, he's going to be ruling a country as a civilian in a country that has so many other interests, so many other institutions that he has to listen to. Do you see that as a challenge?
I don't see that as a challenge because Muhammadu Buhari was a military ruler over 20 years ago, or probably 30 years ago. And he has matured as an individual. And now he has actually also said that he is no longer a military man, and he's a politician.
But does that make it a little harder, perhaps, for his objectives? Because now he has to go through, for example, the Senate. He has to deal with the Parliament, and perhaps some of those people really don't care about his values.
Basically, I don't think Mr. Muhammadu Buhari or President Muhammadu Buhari is a dictator. So he would work with the
hoping they have good intentions.
The other tiers of government, and he would bring the changes that Nigerians are looking for.
Now, let's look at a few of the issues that Mr. Goodluck Jonathan did not seem to have performed very well in the economy, the energy crisis, the fuel shortages, and the insurgents in the northern part of Nigeria. How could he approach this differently?
The Boko Haram issue is really a big thing because it destabilized Nigeria and the northeastern Nigeria, and millions of lives were lost and millions displaced. So for Mr. Muhammadu Buhari, is the first point. The most important thing that he's going to tackle will be the security issue, and he has claimed in his inauguration speech that would be one of the most important things that he would do. And I believe that he would, be able to perform and to make good on his promises.
Now, it's something that sometimes you wish you don't want to say. People say everything in Nigeria goes back to the issue of corruption, and corruption seems to be a culture because people have this worship of material things. The rich are worshipped. How can you tackle that, however well-intentioned, in as few words as you can possibly?
All right. Mr. Buhari is a man of excellence. He's a man who is not so much a materialistic human being. And he has great values, and you cannot buy him the way from what I've learned of him, you cannot buy him. And when you have a leader that cannot be bought, that would trickle down to the rest of his lieutenants, quote unquote.
Hoping that he will have the right guys around him, yeah?
I'm hoping that he would make the right selection.
Well, thank you very much.
Thank
Ms.
you.
John Ekanem.
Thank you, Vincent.
All right. Now, Ms. Mercy John Ekanem is an independent analyst on Nigerian affairs. Now, the United Nations High Commissioner for Human Rights is calling for protection and justice for civilians in South Sudan. Thousands have fled their homes in recent days to escape fighting, and over 600,000 people lack access to aid. The UN High Commissioner for Human Rights says that the escalation of fighting in recent weeks between government and opposition forces in South Sudan has resulted in alarming gross violations of international human rights and international humanitarian law and taken a terrible toll on civilians.
For more than 17 months now, women, men and children have been suffering from the effects of this man-made catastrophe. People have lost their homes. More than 2 million people have had to flee from their homes. They've lost their property. They've lost, in many cases, family members to death or to forced recruitment. And we're receiving very worrying reports in the last month of an escalation in the conflict, with homes and villages having been entirely burned, property having been looted, rapes and killings by government forces and the opposition.
Fighting has forced thousands of people to flee their homes. The UN Humanitarian Coordinator for South Sudan says because of that displacement, more than 600,000 civilians are without access to aid. Talks to end more than a year of bloodshed in South Sudan broke off in March without a deal. The conflict in the East African nation reopened ethnic fault lines between President Salva Kiir's Dinka people and the forces of the opposition leader Riek Machar, who are largely ethnic Nuer. The medical charity Médecins Sans Frontières says over 11,000 newly displaced people have arrived at a UN base in Bentiu Unity State in the country's north in the last few weeks, with horrific accounts of violence. The UN's Children Fund says children as young as 7 have been raped and whole villages burned to the ground in the latest violence.
And in one case, in a protection of civilian site in Melut in Upper Nile State, 7 civilians have actually been killed within these sites, within UN compounds, due to shelling.
Fighting is forcing the International Committee of the Red Cross to evacuate some of its staff from Lear in Unity State, while MSF staff in Lear have fled into the bushes, taking patients with them. Now, for more on the crisis in South Sudan, I'm joined by Justine Fleischman, a South Sudan expert at Enough Project. Mrs. Fleischman, welcome to Africa 54.
Thank you for having me.
Yes, now South Sudan crisis seems to have been moving in slow motion for those who might be observing. From your recent studies, what have you learned? What is the extent of the problem?
The peace process is moving in slow motion, but the conflict itself is actually accelerating. Right now, you're having a competition between government and opposition forces over the last remaining productive oil fields in Upper Nile. If those fields close, the income of the country essentially drops to zero, and it's already facing economic collapse.
Yeah. So there is on one side an economic collapse, which some are saying now is causing other issues like lack of food. But tell us about the humanitarian crisis, how this conflict has impacted the civilians of South Sudan.
Sure. The number of people facing severe food insecurity has almost doubled since the beginning of this year, from 2.5 million to almost 4.6 million. And that number is just going to continue to worsen as the conflict continues.
Now, why is it that it seems like the world is not paying attention to this? Is it true, or are we making a misguided observation here?
I think there is a lot of interest in South Sudan. It's a topic of conversation at the UN constantly. The US government is involved. But when it actually comes to action, that has been where the international community is failing the people of South Sudan. There's a UN Security Council resolution that provides for the possibility of specific targeted designations against individuals that would freeze their assets and their personal wealth, that would change their calculations whether or not to continue fighting. But because of the geopolitics, because of the complexity of the region, the US, Russia, China, other permanent members, and other African states that are directly involved in the peace process haven't taken those steps to really ensure that there's accountability and consequences for the parties continuing this conflict. And that's where
Talking
we're really...
about accountability, it looks like the two sides are really daring the world. We are getting all these reports about actually attacks on UN camps where civilians have gone to seek refuge.
Sure.
What do you make of that?
There's 120,000 civilians or so that are currently seeking protection directly on UN bases across the country. I think what we've seen is, as the conflict has continued, There have been no consequences for human rights violations, for mass atrocities, for killing civilians. And so the parties are becoming more bold and more brazen. And we're seeing both sides taking tactics that they learned in Khartoum, for instance, and applying them to their own civilian populations in South Sudan without consequence.
You've been studying this issue for a long time. Do you get the sense that the leadership in South Sudan, on both sides, are really concerned about the humanitarian crisis in their own country?
I think they, and when we speak to them directly, both sides feel that they have some moral high ground, that they are the ones that should lead the country, that they should govern.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, neither side is taking responsibility for actually what the impact is on the ground.
And besides even responsibility, are they doing anything, for example, to stop the suffering or at least to prevent the deaths of civilians?
Amnesty International just released a report on human rights violations in Bentiu and Unity State, and we're hearing some of the worst atrocities being committed recently. So obviously, whatever they say at the peace process is not making an impact in how their troops are behaving on the ground.
Well, thank you very much. We'll probably call you back to come and tell us a little more about your studies and the article you wrote recently. Yeah?
Thank you very much.
Well, thanks a lot. And Justin Fleischman is a South Sudan expert at Enough Project. Now to a big scandal in the world. Now, despite being under fire for leading an organization that the U.S. Justice Department says is rife with corruption, FIFA President Sepp Blatter is calling for unity among the members of football's governing body. Blatter promised to work to overcome the group's corruption scandal if he is re-elected during Friday's voting. Blatter did not take questions today as he arrived at the 65th FIFA Annual Congress in Zurich, Switzerland, where members will decide if he will get another term as president. Prince Ali bin Ali Hussein of Jordan is challenging him. Blatter says the arrests of 7 top football officials on Wednesday unleashed a storm, but he says he is appealing for unity and the team's spirit so FIFA can move forward. The U.S. Justice Department has charged 14 football officials and business executives with offenses that include racketeering, wire fraud, and money laundering. Well, we want to know what you think about Africa 54 and the stories we cover. Join the conversation on Facebook. The address is Africa 54, and check out our headlines 24/7 on voaafrica.com. Coming up, the golden anniversary celebration of Music Time in Africa. Stay with us.
One of the largest cities in the U.S., Los Angeles, plans to raise the minimum wage to $15 an hour, phased in over 5 years. At the American Enterprise Institute, economist Aparna Murtha says studies show mandating higher wages can hurt some workers.
They actually find minimum wage hikes were associated with a loss in jobs for low-skilled workers.
Mandated minimums do not guarantee job creation. Lots of countries with minimum wages experience high unemployment, especially among the youth. But for the working poor, higher wages can mean a higher standard of living.
I've been working 40, 50 hours, and I could barely pay my rent. After depending on government assistance to get some food to eat.
Though each country has different labor laws, in this global economy, businesses are freer than ever to travel the world to find those willing to work for less. For VOA's BizBeat, I'm Philip Alexio.
Welcome back. It's time for our Music Makers Friday segment, and today we are highlighting Voice of America's longest-running program. Music Time in Africa is celebrating its golden anniversary. After 50 years, the vibrant show is still hitting the right notes and going strong, broadcasting African music to Africa. VOA's Paul Cisco has more.
It's Music Time in Africa.
At 50, Music Time in Africa is VOA's longest-running program. An instant success, Leo, the Music Man for Africa Sarkisian, brought Music Time to African listeners for the first time in May 1965. He broadcast from a small studio on Mamba Point in Monrovia, Liberia.
Music and art has been my whole life.
Retired but not tired, Leo now has more time for his family and still dances with his passions, African art and music.
Yo, wake up! Yo, wake up!
Without skipping a beat, I'll call her Doctor of Music, Heather Maxwell began hosting Music Time 3 years ago.
It's about music, but it's also about music videos. It's about presenting music and watching music as much as it is listening to music. So, and talking about it too. So now we still have the great 60-minute show, but now there's a social media component. So I talk to a lot of fans and musicians in Africa every day on Facebook, on Twitter. So there's a lot of engagement like that with the audience on social media.
Heather has a doctorate in musicology and, like her predecessor, is multi-talented.
Mango tree, your shade looks lovely.
And you perform?
Yes, I do.
Yeah,
I'm a singer.
People sitting under you, trying to be.
I'm a singer, and I also love African instruments, so I play a few different kinds. I play the balafon and an instrument called the kamalingoni, which is a 6-string harp.
So what's next? Where do you think you're going?
Well, TV, more and more TV. Keeping the radio show, because I love radio and I love listening to radio, and I know a lot of Africans love listening to radio. But really nowadays, young listeners, they listen to music with their eyes as much as they do with their ears. Now Music Time is just starting to be on TV through a platform here at VOA we call Music Alley, and it broadcasts to Africa but also all around the world. So now Music Time in Africa is going to be showing off African music, not just to other Africans on the continent, but showing off African music to the world. So this is what I am super excited about.
So alone, just sitting here so alone.
It's been 50 years of Music Time with Africa, and there will be more.
Come on, Pete.
Paul Cisco, VOA News.
Maybe another 50 years, eh? Well, it's time now for a short break. Still to come on Africa 54, Forbes magazine crowns the world's most powerful women of 2015. We'll be right back.
If you've just joined us, I'm Mariama Diallo, and here is a quick recap of today's headlines. Nigeria, Muhammadu Buhari is sworn in as Nigeria's president after the first opposition party victory in the nation's history. In Burundi, opposition leaders claim free and fair elections are impossible. That's after weeks of protest against incumbent President Pierre Nkurunziza's bid for a third term. In South Africa, President Jacob Zuma is cleared in a corruption scandal involving use of public money for renovations to his private residence. And renowned Angolan journalist Rafael Marques de Moraes is sentenced to a 6-month suspended jail term for linking military generals to the blood diamond trade. That's all for today. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next time.
Welcome back to Africa 54. I'm Esther Gido-Ewart. And here's what's trending. German Chancellor Angela Merkel has topped the Forbes list of the world's 100 most powerful women, but she may have a fight on her hands to retain the title. Former U.S. Secretary of State and current presidential candidate Hillary Clinton is at number 2, just a ballot box away from the top spot. Philanthropist Melinda Gates and First Lady Michelle Obama made it into the top 10. Among the entertainers on the list are billionaire Queen of Talk Oprah Winfrey and performer Taylor Swift, who is also the youngest woman to make the top 100 this year. Next up, after 8 long years, troubled actress Lindsay Lohan is finally off probation. Los Angeles Superior Court Judge Mark Young on Thursday ended Lohan's probation in a reckless driving case, closing the last of a series of early criminal cases that have dogged the actress for years. Young says he reviewed community service logs and determined that Lohan had completed her sentence. He praised Lohan's attorney, Sean Hawley, telling her she did an excellent job getting the actress to complete the hours. Despite it being a banner day, Lohan was not in court. And finally, now that's a smartphone. In fact, this phone is so smart, it unlocks by recognizing your iris when you look at the screen. That's the latest feature of the Fujitsu Aero's NXF04G, which went on sale this month. The Iris Passport system takes 1 second to unlock and learns the features of the owner's eyes, making the recognition more accurate with each use. The phone has infrared light so that even in a dark area, it is able to recognize the user's iris quickly. Sounds good, but it's not for everyone. Iris Passport doesn't work with colored contact lenses. And that's what's trending today. Vincent, back to you.
Well, it's certainly been an exciting week in sports, and NBA action is at a fever pitch. Joining us now is Sonny Young with the sunny side of sports. Hello, Sonny.
Hello, Vincent, and sporty greetings once again to our Africa 54 viewers. Let's begin with the National Basketball Association Finals, which tip off June 4th in the western U.S. city of Oakland, California. Stephen Curry and his 2-year-old daughter, Riley, were in the spotlight after he led the Golden State Warriors to the NBA Finals for the first time in 40 years. Curry, the NBA's most valuable player, had 26 points and 8 rebounds as the Warriors, in the white uniforms, eliminated the Houston Rockets 104-90 in Game 5 of the Western Conference Finals. In the championship round, Curry and the Warriors will play LeBron James and the Cleveland Cavaliers. There we see them in the yellow uniforms. The Cavs swept the Atlanta Hawks in 4 straight games in the Eastern Conference Finals. Now, many basketball fans are looking forward to seeing how LeBron, a 4-time NBA most valuable player, does against Stephen Curry. Once again, it's the Warriors against the Cavaliers in the best-of-7 game NBA Finals, which tip off June 4th. I'm VOA's Sonny Young, and that's the sunny side of sports. Vincent?
Well, thanks a lot, Sonny, and be sure to check out the sunny side of sports every Monday and Friday right here on Africa 54. Well, that's our show for today. Be sure to watch Africa 54 on our website at voaafrica.com. For more news, tune in to VOA's evening radio show, Africa News Tonight at 1800 UTC, and in the mornings to Daybreak Africa between 0300 and 0600 UTC, Monday through Friday. Thanks a lot for watching from all of us here in Washington. Have a good night. Sonny.
Music is something that brings people together.
Music educates, it motivates, it's a bridge.
Music. Ali.
On.
VOA.
qubanaha VOA waxaan ku soo gudbinnaa qubanayaal goosgoos oo xiiso badan oo ku saabsan arrimaha Soomaaliya, Mareykanka iyo caalamkaba.
haddaba qubanaha VOA-da kala soco website-keena voasomali.com.
From VOA Learning English, this is the Technology Report.
I'm Milar Sega. I'm the host of VOA's The Correspondents.
A roundup of the world's top stories.
Here's a false choice in more ways than one.
We can't actually put you there, but we can come pretty close. In 30 minutes, we'll show you the world.